Hey everyone, welcome to IGN's review discussion for The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. I'm Marty Sleva. I reviewed the game for IGN. I'm joined by Sam Claiborne.
I'm wearing a mask.
He's wearing a Majora mask. And Brian Altano.
I'm wearing a mask of sadness.
I gave the game an 8.7. I thought it was absolutely great. And for a quick snippet of my review, here's my verdict. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D proves that interesting game design and strong world building never get old. Even 15 years later, it still delivers charming characters, tense resource management, and a world rife with personality. Despite some cumbersome menus and a single drag of a dungeon, Majora's Mask is a great adventure that stands the test of time. For more on The Legend of Zelda, you're already in the right place, IGN.com. So obviously one of the big topics around Majora's Mask is the fact that this is a 15-year-old game that was originally for the Nintendo 64, but now we're playing an updated version on the 3DS. What did you guys think of the changes that were made?
Well, you didn't play it back in the day, right?
No, I did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah,
Did you beat it back in the day?
Yes, I did, and I didn't like it.
Too. So we all did.
Yeah, but you didn't like it, because I loved it back in the day.
No, I mean, I tried to love it. I mean, it had everything that I wanted in it from Ocarina of Time in terms of music and art and characters and the same engine it was running on. And I was fresh off of Ocarina and extremely happy to play something like that. And I found myself sort of like torn apart by the systems, and the timing and trying to get through dungeons with a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I was probably kind of playing it wrong, and there are right ways to play it, like slowing down the time and making sure that you start a dungeon at the top of the first day, so you have 3 full days to do it. And I'm still not 100% wild about that system, but I understand why people love it, and I do find myself loving it more. And I think that some of the changes they implemented in this version, in terms of like picking an exact time of day when you want to move to, or getting at least close to it, is a good change. And I know people are mad at it, but there was a lot of standing around and waiting.
Yeah,
and this is a handheld game, so like, let me get to the fun.
Yeah, that change was one of my favorites in the games. The song of double time that lets you go to actually any specific hour in any of the 3 days. That made, hey, if you like want to finish off the side quest, but you just don't want to wait around the end of the third day,
you don't have to dance with the scarecrow.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the really smart changes. Obviously, there's the visual changes. I think the game looks fantastic.
Yes.
On 3DS.
You know what's funny about this game is that it takes all of the things that you can visually see in Ocarina of Time. It just makes a different game out of them.
Yeah.
It's totally a game mod.
Yeah.
So like it recycles things that are visible, but nothing else. And it's totally not like Ocarina of Time.
No, absolutely not.
And it's not like any Zelda game.
Yes.
It's not like any other. It's the most un-Zelda game of any Zelda game. There's not an open world that's dangerous to explore.
Yeah.
There's not 8 dungeons. There's only 4.
There's no princess to save.
Really, your goals in this game are like are very side quest oriented.
Yeah,
Everything feels like a side quest. You do a series of side quests to get in your like final day to a dungeon, and then you have to like get through it as fast as possible. You have to start over again.
Yeah. One of the things I felt was weird though is that they move around certain things. They make small tweaks that just they move around characters or they move around where you get specific items.
You mean in the remake?
In the remake, yeah. There's a hell of a lot of bottles in this one.
There's 7 bottles.
So far.
They added an additional bottle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is straight.
But that's great because that makes it almost like a master quest for me.
So, I agree with that.
Halfway there.
Yes, I think it's the halfway there thing. I feel like they went a little bit in making things feel different and sort of throwing you off your game, but not far enough to be like, oh man, this is like a completely different thing, which I sort of wish they would
Change the boss fights, for instance.
Yeah.
But the bosses are kind of stressful once you get to them, so I can't really appreciate the changes in the boss fights.
Yeah,
Because I want
exactly.
to finish my day.
Yeah.
My favorite change in this game that they made is that there's 5 kids around town, and then the bombers, and they have a note that you have their notebook, right? I even used this the first time I played Majora's Mask, the notebook that keeps track of everybody's time. When you talk to people, it gets added to your notebook. You can see their schedules. Helps you piece together some puzzles. But this time around, when you talk to bombers, they'll give you a hint. And it's almost like the Sheikah stones.
Yeah.
But this time, when they give you a hint, it shows up in your notebook, and the primary players will get filled in. So you know what's left for you to do.
Yeah.
And so you don't just completely miss something.
For sure.
Like based on a heart piece.
I actually think
or
that was sort of a running theme throughout the game, is that it's easier now.
Yeah.
And not like in the like, your sword is stronger or the enemies are weaker kind of way, but in sort of the way that it's slightly less obtuse.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, okay, because it already still is the most obtuse Zelda game ever made. And it's completely bizarre in many of its systems. But I think that the Bomber Notebook now, how it actually identifies what you need to do and when you screwed something up.
It'll bring up a map.
Yeah.
With the point where that person is at that time.
You can set timers and alarms to be like,
I like that.
This is the exact moment the mailman's running by, so you can
and
meet
so you're
him
like,
right here.
yeah, so like an hour before, you're like, oh, I'll warp there.
And that, you can tell that was the intention of that notebook, because it was in the original game. I swear, I think I played the entire game twice and really never used it.
That's crazy.
And now I don't know why I didn't use it, because I know why, because I used a strategy guide.
Yeah,
And
so
by
did I.
the
I went
way,
through.
IGN's strategy guide was always awesome for this game, and it is being remade entirely for this, and it's free
is it
and
in
giant
3D?
and massive and great.
Not in 3D?
No, it's not in 3D.
It's not in 3D. Yeah, I like the Bomber's Notebook. Again, it's one of those things I wish they would have went a little bit further with it. I felt like the menus were kind of clunky. It gave you information, but the information wasn't super easy to parse through. I found myself actually writing down physical notes, which I usually don't mind in games, but it's weird.
What did you write down specifically?
I was actually writing down specific timelines for like almost like at the beginning of the day, if you make a list of the things you need to do, I would literally write that down. Last thing I want to talk about in terms of the remake remaster. Did you guys play on the new 3DS?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
the camera nub makes all the difference.
So that's the big change here. What did you guys think of the C-stick or second analog
I
stick?
think it's essential.
Yeah.
I think you need it. I think it's so. Wind Waker is the first game to do this.
Yeah.
First Zelda game to do this, where you have a fully rotatable camera. In this game, when you remake it, there's parts of it. I mean, it's a kind of a weird looking game, but there's parts of it that are pretty. And I love being able to like stand at a vista and just kind of rotate my camera and look and take stock, and also like just to track enemies around me.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I enjoyed it, and I think it's definitely really helpful, especially in very open areas. But I found in some of the tighter, cramped areas, it tended to get stuck sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't think it controls like the sort of typical twin stick sort of 3D game that modern gamers are used to. And that's the sort of push and pull I felt a lot playing Majora's Mask. Is it a 15-year-old game, or is it this brilliant Zelda game that still holds up?
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the updates help that move along, but little things still keep holding it back. And it was the same way I felt with Ocarina of Time, where Grezzo remade it, and still walking up to a sign and hitting a button, you could either read it or chop it in half.
Yep.
And it was little things like that you're just sort of like, okay, well that's an old game design implementation that hasn't really been fixed yet, and it's still there. So I did like.
Did you know you can play the Song of Healing in Majora's Mask to fix that sign?
Oh, really?
Just
I think
fix
couldn't you
signs?
do that in Ocarina as well?
That's really cool.
No, there's no Song of Healing in Ocarina of Time.
Really? I thought there was a way to fix
It's a
signs.
song of feeling.
There probably is. But
I'm always singing the Song of Feeling.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page that 15 years later, despite some seeing some signs of aging, Majora's Mask has aged incredibly well and is still a great game.
Yep.
So that's what we thought of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
You're welcome, Goro.
Oh, that's really nice, Goro.
Thank you, Martin.
Oh, you guys are kind. For everything else, The Legend of Zelda and spooky masks, you're already in the right place. IGN.com.